Welcome to our deep dive into the Trump presidency, a period that redefined American politics in numerous ways. From unconventional governance to reshaping the judiciary, let's explore the key aspects of this transformative era. Over the next few minutes, we'll examine the defining moments, policy shifts, and lasting impacts of the 45th presidency. We'll delve into the controversies, the achievements, and the unprecedented events that have left an indelible mark on the American political landscape. Whether you agreed with his policies or not, there's no denying that Donald Trump's presidency was anything but ordinary. Let's try to understand how his unique brand of politics captivated millions and fundamentally changed the way we view the highest office in the land. From the moment Donald Trump descended the escalator in Trump Tower, he positioned himself as the ultimate political outsider. A businessman with no prior experience in elected office, he campaigned on a promise to drain the swamp of Washington, D.C. His supporters, many of whom felt ignored by the political establishment, were drawn to his brash style and his willingness to challenge the status quo. They saw in him a successful businessman who could bring his deal-making skills to the White House. His critics, however, saw him as woefully unprepared for the complexities of governing. They worried about his temperament, his lack of foreign policy experience, and his tendency to make impulsive decisions. Trump's approach to governing was as unconventional as his path to the White House. He often bypassed traditional media outlets, preferring to communicate directly with the American people through Twitter. His tweets, often sent in the early morning hours, could send shockwaves through the political establishment. He used social media to attack his opponents, announce policy changes, and even fire members of his own administration. This unorthodox approach to governing kept both his supporters and his detractors on edge, never quite sure what to expect next. Donald Trump's use of Twitter was unprecedented in American political history. Never before had a president used social media so directly and so frequently to communicate with the public. His tweets, often riddled with misspellings and grammatical errors, were nonetheless impossible to ignore. They dominated news cycles, sparked international incidents, and provided a constant stream of commentary on everything from the Mueller investigation to the latest celebrity feud. Trump supporters praised his use of social media, arguing that it allowed him to circumvent the traditional media, which they viewed as biased against him. They saw his tweets as authentic and unfiltered, a direct line to his thoughts and feelings. His critics, however, were horrified by his use of social media. They saw his tweets as reckless, divisive, and often downright dangerous. They worried about the erosion of presidential norms and the potential for his tweets to incite violence or spread misinformation. Love him or hate him, there's no denying that Donald Trump changed the way presidents communicate. His use of Twitter had a profound impact on the media landscape and on the way we consume political news. Donald Trump campaigned on a promise to put America first in foreign policy. One of his first acts was withdrawing from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He renegotiated NAFTA, creating the USMCA. Trump's approach extended to relationships with U.S. allies. His most controversial move was withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal. He favored personal relationships with leaders like Putin and Kim Jong-un. A wall of controversy. From the very beginning of his campaign, Donald Trump made immigration a central issue. He promised to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border and to crack down on illegal immigration. One of his first actions as president was to issue an executive order banning travel from several Muslim-majority countries. The order was immediately challenged in court and sparked protests at airports across the country. Trump also implemented a zero-tolerance policy at the border, which led to the separation of thousands of migrant children from their parents. The policy drew widespread condemnation, including from some members of Trump's own party. The Trump administration also made it more difficult for people to seek asylum in the United States. It implemented a policy requiring asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their cases were processed, and it made it harder for people fleeing gang violence or domestic abuse to qualify for asylum. Trump's hardline stance on immigration resonated with his base of supporters, who believed that he was taking necessary steps to secure the border and protect American jobs. But his policies also alienated many Americans who saw them as cruel and inhumane. The art of the deal, Washington style. Donald Trump came to Washington promising to shake things up, and he certainly did that when it came to the economy. He slashed regulations, cut taxes, and embraced a more confrontational approach to trade. His signature legislative achievement was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. The law was praised by Republicans and some business groups, but it was criticized by Democrats and some economists. Trump also imposed tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, Canada, and the European Union. He argued that the tariffs were necessary to protect American jobs. The Trump administration also rolled back a number of environmental regulations. These moves were praised by the energy industry but criticized by environmental groups. Reshaping the judiciary. One of the most lasting legacies of the Trump presidency will be his impact on the federal judiciary. He appointed 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, cementing a conservative majority on the court for years to come. Trump's appointments to the Supreme Court were controversial, particularly the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, who was accused of sexual assault by several women. Kavanaugh denied the allegations, and he was narrowly confirmed by the Senate after a bitter partisan battle. In addition to his Supreme Court appointments, Trump appointed a record number of conservative judges to lower federal courts. These judges are likely to have a significant impact on American law for decades to come, ruling on issues such as abortion, gun control, and LGBTQ rights. Trump's success in reshaping the judiciary was due in part to his close relationship with the Federalist Society, a conservative legal organization that helped him identify and vet potential judicial nominees. It was also due to the Republican-controlled Senate, which confirmed his nominees despite fierce opposition from Democrats. A nation divided. Donald Trump's presidency was one of the most divisive in American history. His rhetoric and policies often inflamed tensions along racial, ethnic, and ideological lines. Trump's supporters saw him as a strong leader who was not afraid to speak his mind and challenge the status quo. They appreciated his willingness to confront what they saw as political correctness and his defense of traditional American values. His critics, however, saw him as a demagogue who was willing to exploit racial and ethnic divisions for political gain. They were appalled by his rhetoric, which they saw as racist, sexist, and xenophobic. Trump's presidency coincided with a period of heightened political polarization in the United States. The 2 major political parties became increasingly divided, and Americans became more likely to live in ideological bubbles, surrounded by people who shared their views. This polarization was evident in the response to Trump's policies, which were often met with fierce resistance from Democrats and progressive activists. It was also evident in the 2020 presidential election, which was one of the most contentious in American history. The legacy of January 6th. The final chapter of Donald Trump's presidency was perhaps the most dramatic and consequential. After losing the 2020 presidential election to Joe Biden, Trump refused to concede, making unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud. His supporters, fueled by his rhetoric, stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, in an attempt to prevent Congress from certifying Biden's victory. The attack on the Capitol was a shocking assault on American democracy, and it led to Trump's second impeachment by the House of Representatives. Trump was acquitted by the Senate, but the events of January 6 cast a long shadow over his presidency and left the country deeply divided. The attack raised profound questions about the future of American democracy and the role of disinformation in fueling political violence. In the aftermath of the Capitol riot, social media companies took unprecedented steps to limit the spread of misinformation, suspending Trump from their platforms. The Justice Department launched a wide-ranging investigation into the attack, and Congress established a select committee to investigate the events of January 6. Outro: a defining chapter. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the Trump presidency. Whether you view it as a period of necessary change or a time of unprecedented challenges, its impact on American politics is undeniable. From his unconventional use of social media to his reshaping of the judiciary, Trump's presidency was anything but predictable. His America First agenda reverberated on the world stage, while his policies on immigration and trade sparked heated debates at home. The Trump era will continue to be analyzed and debated for years to come. Its legacy, marked by both fervent support and staunch opposition, serves as a stark reminder of the ever-evolving nature of American democracy. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analyses of pivotal moments in history.